This show is produced by the Harwood Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Cindy Harris, and we love making this show available to you free of charge. If you'd like to help us keep it that way, make a contribution to our Karma Jar. For more information, visit our website. Today I'm so excited to share this Fettuccine Alfredo with fresh pasta with you. You know, I didn't grow up in an Italian family, so I didn't have anyone that could show me how to make pasta from scratch. So it was really fun for me to teach myself, and I'm so excited to be able to teach you. Now, one of the things I might suggest to you is for you to get your smartphone and scan the QR code here on the side of the screen. That way you can follow along with me on the recipe as you watch it the first time. And then if you do get brave enough to try making your own pasta at home, think about having your laptop or iPad somewhere near the kitchen so that you and I can make it together. I think if you go step by step, you'll find it's really fun and really easy to make. Now, if you decide you want to make homemade pasta, you're going to have to decide on a method that really works for you. Now, for me, what really works well is using my KitchenAid. I use it not only to make the dough, but also to cut the pasta with. So that's what I'm going to be showing you today. If you have another type of pasta maker, you can still make this same kind of dough. If you don't have a standing mixer like a KitchenAid, you can always use a large bowl and a wooden spoon. I am going to be using the KitchenAid to do most of my kneading though. If you don't have that, then you can just knead it out on a big board. So for our pasta dough, we're going to use two kinds of flour. This first flour is just a regular all-purpose flour. I'm going to measure out 2 cups and put that into my mixing bowl. And then my other flour is a semolina flour. I'm going to measure out 1 tablespoon, add that. Now you're going to want to keep this semolina flour out because this is what we're going to use to help keep the noodles from sticking together as we roll them out and as we cut them. Now we want to add a little salt. I like to use a really fine sea salt. I'm going to measure out a ½ teaspoon. Now I'm going to mix this together. I'm using my paddle to start with. Just want to get that mixed together a little bit, and now we're going to add our wet ingredients. Now this fresh pasta has eggs in it, and I'm using 3 extra large eggs. Normally when I cook I use large eggs, but for pasta I need just a teeny bit more liquid to balance out the dry ingredients in the bowl, so that's why I'm using 3 extra large eggs. Now on the recipe you'll notice you can measure out the weight of the eggs. It would be 6 ounces, or if you want to put them into a measuring cup and measure them in a liquid way, it would be 3/4 of a cup. But regardless, I'm going to be using the extra large eggs. I'm going to put 3 in. And my last ingredient is 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Now I'm going to lower the paddle and I'm going to let this spin for just 30 seconds. Now, do you see how the dough is coming together? That's just 30 seconds. I'm going to stop, and I'm going to take the paddle off of the mixer, and I'm going to put the dough hook on because now we're going to be kneading. So on goes the dough hook, and I'm going to let this spin on a medium speed for 2 minutes. Now at this point you should start to see a ball of dough starting to come together. It doesn't matter if it's not all coming together because we're going to knead it just a little bit more by hand. So I'm going to pull it all together, and I've got a nice big board here. I'm going to take some of my semolina flour. I'm going to dust this, and we're going to knead this by hand for 1 minute. Now, this is a very stiff dough. It's got a lot of gluten going on in here. And when we knead, it's just like when we knead bread. We're going to start by bringing our palm down, pushing it away, turning it a quarter of a turn actually, and then pushing it away again. Now you'll notice I'm actually holding on to the board. That's how stiff this dough is. And the more I knead it, the smoother it's going to get. And it just takes about a minute. I'm not having to add any more semolina. The dough is really nice. It's not too sticky. It's really just perfect. Now, do you see how smooth that is? That's the kind of consistency I'm looking for this dough. But we have to let the dough rest now. Now, when we're working with this pasta dough, it's really important that we keep the dough wrapped in plastic. The reason being it dries out really, really quickly. Now, we have to let the dough rest, like I mentioned before, for 30 minutes. That is going to let the gluten sort of relax a little bit, and it will make it easier for us to stretch that pasta into those nice thin pieces that we need. So I've covered it with plastic. I'm just going to let it sit here on my board for 30 minutes. Now, while the pasta is resting, I wanted to show you how I'm going to roll out and cut the noodles. Like I said, I'm going to be using my KitchenAid, and you can buy these attachments that work really, really well. Now, when you make pasta, the first thing you have to make is sheets of it before you can cut it. And the sheets end up looking almost like a giant lasagna noodle. And that's what this attachment does. It's going to roll the pasta out into sheets for us. So let me show you how I put it on the KitchenAid. Here in the front of the KitchenAid is this little knob, and with this little black screw here. We're going to undo that, take this off, and then we're going to take the sheet pasta maker. Now, if you look at it, it's quite a hefty piece of gear. It's heavy. It's got rollers in it, and you'll notice the side that goes up, it says do not immerse in water, and that's really, really important with this attachment. You don't wash it. You basically just keep semolina flour going in it, and we dust it out with the pastry brush, but that's about it. And you'll notice that on one end is this sort of round knob, and then on the other end is this sort of piece here. This is what goes into the machine. So I'm going to put it in here, and you kind of jimmy it in. It fits right in, and then we tighten this knob really good. And now it's nice and sturdy here. Now the knob here on the side is the dial, because when you're making pasta, you have to get it really, really thin, and it takes quite a few passes to make that happen. So on the setting dial here, basically what you do is you pull it out and you turn it, and there are little numbers on here. And we're going to start by putting ours on the number 1 setting. That's what you always want to start with. So we'll get that set up. I'm going to turn the machine this way, and what is going to happen is the power of the machine is what's going to roll it. Now, if you have like an Atlas crank pasta maker, you would need to crank with the handle to get the rollers going, and to be honest with you, you need 3 hands to make that happen. You need somebody to do the cranking, because as you see, this sheet of pasta is going to get really long, and I need 1 hand on up here, and I need another hand down here. Speaking of down here, this is where I use my really long board that I have, because I want to be able to feed the pasta out onto the board. It's been 30 minutes, and it's time to divide our dough. Now, we don't start with one big piece like this. We take it, and I use my bench scraper, and I'm going to cut this into 4ths. So first in half, and then each half in half. I'll leave one out. That's what we're going to work with first. And then I need to wrap the others back up into the plastic, because if I let it sit out, it's just going to get all dry, and I do not want that to happen. So I'll set that aside. I'll put a little semolina out on my board. And I basically have to get the pasta dough like this so that I can feed it through the feeder here. So I'm going to just take it in my hand, and I'm going to press it out into kind of a rectangle about 4 to 5 inches long. Got it into a rectangle. So I'm going to fold this in 3rds. So I'm going to take the left side, fold it up to the middle, and then I'll take the right side and fold it up that way, and then press it out a little bit more. So let me show you how we start rolling out our pasta. I'm going to turn the machine on, and I just turn it on the first click. I don't want it going very fast. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to feed it in with the short side. So I go up here to the top, and you'll notice how it starts to feed out the sheet of pasta. And look on this one pass how long it's gotten. That's not enough. We have to fold it in thirds again. So the left side into the center, and then the right side to the center. I'm going to press it out just a little bit. Leave it on the same setting 1. So in it goes, and I want to have my right hand here to catch it. Okay, so that's our second pass. Now I'm going to fold it in thirds one more time. So the left side into the center, then the right side, and then I'm going to press it out a little bit, and I'm going to take it and put it into the roller. Okay, so 3 times on setting 1. Now I'm going to change it to setting 2. So I pull out the dial and turn it 1 click. And now I'm going to take this, I'm not folding it, we're all done folding, and I'm going to feed it through the machine on setting 2. It's going to squish it even thinner. So that's 1 pass, and I put it right back in for the second pass. See how nice it is that that roller is working for me? I'm not having to crank it. Now I'm going to go to setting 3. Now this time I can start to feel that the dough is getting a little bit more surface area. It's getting a little sticky, so I'm going to put some semolina on it because I want to make sure that it passes through the pasta roller really easily. So I'm going to feed it through on setting 3. See how much longer it's getting? So that's pass 1, and then right back in again for its second pass. Okay, I'm going to set this down, sprinkle a little more semolina on it, and I'm going to turn the dial now to setting 4. Now this is going to be our last setting that we go on to make the fettuccine. So I'm going to put it in the roller. You can see it's getting much, much thinner. My hand, the color of my skin is actually showing through. Now you can see why I use my long board here. I'm going to sprinkle a little more on. And this is going to be our last pass. Now you'll notice when I pick it up, I'm either using my palm up, so I get the most surface area of my hand, or I'm putting it on the back of my hand. That way it doesn't tear. And we just let the roller do all the work. So here is our first big sheet of pasta. Isn't it amazing that from that little teeny piece of dough we have a sheet this size? I just think that's fantastic. And it's so beautifully thin. Now we have to cut it. You've got to get a little rimmed baking sheet with a piece of parchment, and again sprinkle some semolina on it. This is where we're going to put our little pasta nests. Now, with the KitchenAid, this is the attachment that makes the nice big sheet of pasta like this. This doesn't cut the pasta, that's a different one. So I take this off, And I'll set that to the side. And the two attachments I have, one is spaghetti and one is fettuccine. And the fettuccine is a little bit wider noodle, and that's of course what I'm going to be making tonight, so I want to use that. So I'm going to put it on my machine, just like I did the other attachment. Get it going on one click. I'm going to sprinkle a little semolina here on my sheet. Now as it gets longer like this, you have to kind of handle it carefully. And I'm going to take and I'm going to thread it through the machine, and you're going to see what happens. See how it's cutting the fettuccine? I have to catch that as it comes out. And there it is. It's taken our sheet and cut it into these beautiful noodles. Now I'm going to sprinkle a little bit more semolina on here because it's really important that the surface area of the pasta is going to be sort of sticky, those edges as it's cut, and we don't want that. Now when you're storing your fresh pasta, this is the easiest way to do it. What I do is I take and I divide these noodles in half, and I take one little bundle and I just wrap it around my hand like this into a little nest. And then I'm going to set that right on my parchment and put a little sprinkle of semolina. And then I'll do the same thing here. I just kind of gather it together in a nest and put it here. Now each one of these would be one serving of pasta. So we've got 2 servings ready. We have 3 more pieces of dough. So I'm going to take one more out, making sure to keep the others nicely sealed. I have to switch from the cutter to the sheet attachment. Crank that down. Going to press my dough out into a rectangle. It's about 4 or 5 inches long. I'm going to fold it like an envelope. Press that out. Got to make sure to turn my setting back to 1. Turn it on 1 click, just so the roller starts. Make sure I have some semolina on my board. And I want to make sure this is thin enough that it can start rolling. Here we go. So we remember that we do it on setting 1 3 times, making sure to fold it like an envelope each time. I'm going to turn the dial to setting 2, no more folding, and I'm going to run it through 2 times. I'm going to turn it up to setting 3. And I'm going to run it through 2 times. Now we're going to set it up to setting 4. We'll run that through twice. Here we go. Then we turn this off and we put our fettuccine cutter on, and then we feed it through. And there's our fettuccine. Set it on the board, turn the machine off, give it a nice generous dusting, and then we'll divide this into 2, and we'll make 2 little nests of noodles that we'll put right on our board. Now I've made 8 servings of pasta. Each nest is 1 serving. Now I do not let my pasta just sit out and dry because sometimes it doesn't dry thoroughly. It can start to mold in the middle, and it gets to be sort of a problem. The best thing to do is to take this whole sheet and put it in your freezer for about an hour. Now after about an hour, the little nests get very hard. like this. This is some spaghetti I made a couple of weeks ago. And what you can do then is take each little nest and put them in a freezer bag like this and seal it up and keep it in your freezer up to a month, so you can have fresh pasta anytime you want it. Now tonight I'm going to be making the fettuccine alfredo. I'm going to go ahead and pop this into the freezer while I'm getting things ready for the sauce, and then I can take just as many. I'm going to take 4 nests out for 4 servings of pasta tonight. Now before I clean up here to start getting ready for my sauce, I did want to show you how you clean your attachment. With the attachments comes one of these little pastry brushes, and all you want to do is kind of run it in here, and what I especially look for is to see if any little bits of pasta have gotten stuck in those rollers. If you see a little piece has, let the attachment just sit out for a few hours, and that pasta is going to get hard really quick, and then you can just take a toothpick and kind of pop it out. But today I don't see anything. So that tells me I had a good amount of semolina that I was using. And I'll do the same thing with my sheet roller. Just dust that off. And with a clean towel, I just sort of wipe it down. And I store these in the box that they came with because they have a nice cardboard divider. I really don't want these stainless steel attachments bumping up against each other and scraping them. Those look great. I'll put those right back into their box. Now I'm going to start getting things ready for the Alfredo sauce. That kind of comes together pretty quickly. Now, one of the key components of Alfredo is the Parmesan cheese. Now, I usually buy my Parmesan in these big shaved pieces because I really like that. But for this sauce, we don't want it to be in these big pieces. So I'm going to break it down by using my little Cuisinart Mini Prep. I need to end up with about 2/3 of a cup of finely grated cheese. You can see that really grinds it up nice and finely. And then I measure out 2/3 of a cup. Now you may ask yourself, why don't I just buy the cheese that's already pre-ground? Well, the reason I do that is because many times to keep the cheese nice and loose in the container, especially when it's grated nice and fine like this, they add a lot of other ingredients to it, separators and things like that. And I really don't want that. I just want the real deal cheese, so I don't mind grating it myself like this. And now that the cheese is ready, I'm going to mince up half of a shallot. Now this is a shallot. It's like a teeny little onion, but it's a mild or sweeter flavor. And it comes like this usually, where there's 2 halves. And I'm going to break off 1/2, and I'll save the other half for later. I'm going to peel it. And I'm going to mince it just like I would a regular onion, where I take my knife and run it through parallel to the counter 2 times, and then I cut some slices into this back root end, and then I just run my knife through it like this, and it gives me a nice fine chop. If I find, like here, this is kind of a big piece, I'm just going to take my knife and run this through. But I do want the shallot to be chopped up really nice and finely. Now I'm going to measure out 1/2 cup of heavy cream. I've got 3 tablespoons of butter that I'm going to cut into cubes. Again, I do that because I find that it melts a lot quicker that way. And then last but not least, I've gotten a few sprigs of parsley, flat leaf parsley, out of the garden. I'm going to cut the stems off. I don't want that. And I'm going to mince this up. I want to end up with about 1 to 2 tablespoons of parsley. Now this fettuccine alfredo will come together rather quickly over at the stove, so that's why it's important we get all of our ingredients ready here. But now it's time to talk about cooking the fresh pasta. Now, fresh pasta doesn't take nearly as long to cook as dry pasta, because with dry pasta, you have to rehydrate all the noodles. That's why it takes about 10 minutes. For fresh pasta, under 5 minutes, depending on how wide the noodle is. When I make spaghetti, it's only 2 minutes in the boiling water. For this fettuccine, about 2.5 to 3. That's it. So I use a nice big pot. I fill it about 2/3 of the way with water, and then I'm going to put it on the stove on high heat and bring it to a boil. Now you can see I've got my pasta out of the freezer. I'm going to be using 4 of the nests. I'll put the rest back in the freezer when I'm done. Got my pot of water, bringing it to boil on high heat. And here I have a large saute pan. I have it on medium-high heat. I'm going to put my butter in, and I'm going to let that start to melt. Then I'm going to add my shallot. And after 2 minutes, the shallot starts to brown. I'm going to add my cream. Now after just a minute or so, you can see that that sauce has gotten nice and thick. I'm going to turn the heat down, and I'm just going to move it off to the side. Now you'll notice that I have kept the cover on. That helps the water come to a boil quicker. So I'm going to take the cover off. I'm going to put a nice big pinch of salt in the water. That's going to help flavor the pasta even more. And now I'm going to take 4 of my nests of pasta and drop them right in. I've got my tongs. I'm going to give that a little stir. And I'm going to put the timer immediately on for about 2.5 minutes. Every now and then, I'm just going to move my tongs in there to keep those noodles separate. Now you can see it's come back to a boil. You can see how much plumper the noodles are getting. If it starts to get too high a bubble, you can always turn the heat down to medium-high. It's been about 2.5 minutes. I'm going to take a little piece of pasta out. Taste it, it's cooked perfectly. So I'm going to turn the heat off, and now I'm going to bring my saute pan back over the medium-high heat. I'm going to bring my noodles here. So I'm not going to drain the pasta. I want to keep the water on it, and I'm just going to put it right into the pan with the sauce. Now I'm going to take half of my Parmesan cheese, sprinkle that on top, and with my tongs I'm going to start tossing this together. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and some black pepper to taste. And again, just toss that around. And now we're ready to serve. So we have this beautiful pan of fettuccine Alfredo. I'm going to put it in a big serving dish. Take the rest of my cheese and sprinkle that all over the top, along with my parsley. Now, because this fettuccine is so long, I really recommend using a fork and a large soup spoon. Now, I'm just going to take a little bit out of here to taste. That pasta is unbelievable. It doesn't taste like any kind of dry pasta you'd ever get. The sauce is perfect. It just is meant to lightly coat the noodles. It's not meant to have the noodles swimming in the sauce. This is a really, really good fettuccine Alfredo. Well, if you'd like to try this fettuccine Alfredo with fresh pasta at home, just go to our website. Go to the Easy Entertaining show notes, and I'll have the recipe there for you. If you do make it at home, please send me a photo so I can send you the pasta badge. Join us on Facebook. That's where I do all my vlogging. And as always, if you have any ideas or questions for me, please send me an email. I'll see you next time.